obviously with all the geopolitics going on and whatnot, and I really have to give you a lot of credit, Casey. Like, you posted a video right away about being sort of proudly Jewish and your thoughts on the matter. And obviously this is a very proudly Jewish podcast. But I find like in these moments every year or two and you said you hate making these videos, but you feel compelled to, I'm just so in awe of the way, like, I feel like you're able to frame it, you're able to educate people in a way that isn't overly intrusive, isn't overly preachy. A lot of times there's no cuts in the video. So I'd love to hear sort of more of your approach to that and how all that came to be.
Well, you know, I think I learned a lot. I made a very bad video about like the 2016 presidential election, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. And I think my feelings in that video were how a lot of people felt, especially at that time. Like, this was like right when the grab him by the pussy video came out, right after Trump had said some really awful things. And I feel differently about Trump now. I'm not saying, I'm certainly not endorsing him or anything like that, but I had fears about Trump. I think I was really caught up in sort of the hyper anti-Trumpism. You know, he's still not my favorite. I've still never voted for a Republican presidential candidate. But I definitely felt different about Trump in 2020 than I did in 2016. In 2016, like, I really was on that train. I believed that hype that like he was the fucking Antichrist. And I made a very heavy-handed video about that. And I think ultimately, like, it was ineffective. And I think the reason why it was ineffective is like, I don't know that it was true to like exactly how I felt. I think I started from a place with that video of like, how can I be as forceful as possible? And it wasn't how I would talk to you if you came to me and you're like, what are you thinking about Clinton versus Trump?
Yeah.
And what's funny is I'm not like, I've known Hillary Clinton. I've met her a couple of times. In fact, I'm very proud to say once early in my career, she stood up on a podium and mispronounced my name. We made like a video for a nonprofit and she was like, I want to thank Casey Neistat for making a fucking lady. So I've met her before and like, you know, she, you know, there was some familiarity there, but even so, it wasn't implicit endorsement of her. I was like, you know, at least she's smart. But I really went aggressive about how my feelings towards Trump. And I don't think it was effective. I think it felt dishonest. And I think like beyond how crazy the sort of the MAGA supporters were then and how much they went after me personally, that bothered me less than like me recognizing that there was some truth in the critique. You know, it's like YouTube comments only hurt when they tell you the truth.
Yeah, like we've put on a couple, Josh.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, fuck, that hurt. So I don't know. So I learned a lot from that. And I do feel like it was kind of there was something dishonest about it. There were edits in that video. And then, you know, when things like George Floyd happened or when things like, you know, the 2020 election happened. And again, I sort of felt that it was appropriate and necessary to speak up. I think that you have an obligation when you have an audience that to talk to them about not just fun things or like buy this new phone I'm endorsing, but like, here's how I feel right now, to take a more thoughtful approach to it. And yeah, like I try not to do a cut. I'd rather re-record the whole thing. I want you to know that I'm speaking to you. I'm not reading off the script or trying to edit this or optimize this for views or sensationalism or anything like that. And this in particular, the video about Jewishness that you're referring to in particular, you know, I recorded that in the immediate aftermath of October 7th. October 7th was a Saturday, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I recorded that video, I believe, on like a Wednesday, which was kind of the first day I was back in New York in my office. And certainly before things got as noisy as they are right now, is like messy as they are right now. There was still a lot of ambiguity then, and there was still a much greater sense of sympathy then towards the Israelis and the Jewish people in general. But I think what I said in that video then, which is that like, this is a all complicated issue. We're talking about 3,000 years of disputed land here. Like, this is a wildly complicated, but what's not complicated is siloing the anti-Semitism and what that means here and what that means everywhere. And speaking up about that is the most important thing right now that we can do. And I feel that message and that feeling that I had then, 3 weeks ago now, is more relevant 3 weeks later, because it was almost prophetic. Like I didn't think of it as prophetic. I wasn't like, this is going to get bad and all these fucking anti-Semites are going to crawl out of their graves. Like I had no idea that it was going to be like it is right now. And it's shocking.
Yeah.
But it does, when I look back at that, I'm glad I made it. And I'm glad I was just, as truthful and as honest as I could in the words that I chose, because I do think the relevance of that is, has gotten, unfortunately, much greater than even when I recorded it.
What we all knew subconsciously as Jews as that was unfolding was there's only a matter of time before the narrative shifts. And so I think people were very quick, you, myself, and just proud Jews in general, wanted to make sure that everybody understood this was unprovoked and what you're going to see is going to happen from this. There's going to be a response and it's just going to turn anti-Semitic. And that's exactly what's going to happen because it happens every time. And somehow, some way, the conversation, and again, we don't have to talk about this the whole time, but the conversation goes away from there are 240 hostages and we need to get them home to here's the response to trying to get them home. And it's no longer about Jewish lives at all. It's no longer about Israelis. It's no longer about the people at this music festival that weren't only Jewish. It's no longer about that. It's only about the response while the hostages are still there. And I think we just knew it.
We were talking about this with Chris DiStefano, but why is it part of the Crazy People Handbook? There's only 3 things people talk about. The FBI's out to get me. The government's out to get me. Those pesky Jews. Why is it? I'm just like, pick a new group. Blame the Mormons. Like, can we find a new group?
It's a losing battle. I have like a very nihilistic take on anti-Semitism that, I'm not proud of, but I think it's rooted in reality. And just the idea that idealism and ideals that I think our generation or generations just slightly younger than ours have been raised in these very coddled, very warm, very safe American lives where we do have as much bullshit surrounded sort of the woke movement. I think what the woke and wokeism represented was just we've come so far as a society that now we can focus on these things that if we were at a global war, if it was World War II, nobody'd be arguing about pronouns, but clearly these words matter to some people.
Sure.
And we're at such a place in society that we can focus on these things.
Yep.
And I think that represents just how safe and warm we got. And the reality is it takes an event like that, like a horrible terrorist attack against an ethnicity solely because of their ethnicity.
Yeah.
To reveal that nope. Idealism is warm and safe and lovely, but it is ideal. And reality, history, 6,000 years of recorded history since the Sumerians reveals that no, humans are fucking violent. History is violent. Violence is going nowhere. We are a warring species. We don't have as much hair on our bodies as we did when we were fighting with sticks and stones, but we are still just fucking animals. And that's not going to change.
Could you imagine fighting with sticks and stones? No thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, Rick's got a boulder.
I know, but it's if you had to choose between sticks or stones or M1 Abram tanks.
Not great. Yeah, not a great trade.
I don't know that I want to go up against a tank.
Yeah, we're the good guys, we're not the great guys, we're just so good.